Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and if I could give you one piece of advice, it's that you shouldn't listen to horrible people on the internet that want you to change. And in this video, I'm going to be comparing the Logitech G Pro X Superlight with the glorious Model 02 wireless. These are two incredibly lightweight mice with a nice style and very different features to them. And I'm going to compare them here side by side, talk about the differences between them, talk about the specs differences, the feature differences, what I like and don't like about them, and show you the various highlights of them. Now you'll notice obviously some significant differences immediately. The Glorious obviously has that glorious RGB lighting and holes in it, whereas the Superlight is fairly understated. The G Pro X Superlight is a popular gaming mouse among many people, including myself, for a number of different reasons. It's understated and yet lightweight, well built and interesting for a number of different reasons, including those slick PTFE feet on the underside, a lack of RGB lighting, which means that it can go in and go in, and more. Whereas the glorious Model O has particular interesting highlights to it. Obviously, some very nice style for a start, and potentially better specs on paper. Now, the G Pro X Superlight is actually available in a number of different colors. You can get it in black, white, red, pink, all sorts of different colors are available. There's lots of different options out there, which is pretty interesting in itself. It also has a number of interesting highlights included in the box as standard. You'll have seen grip tapes included, for example. It also has a little swappable. You also have a little swappable dock cover on the underside that you can swap out with a PTFE one, and this is where you store your dongle when it's not in use. There's 2.4 gigahertz dongle, and that is also available to plug into this extender, which then has a micro USB charging cable. That'll put many people off because of that micro USB, but it is an aging device. Maybe Logitech will eventually release a Superlight V2 Pro or something similar like that, which will improve that. But one highlight that the Superlight does have that the Glorious doesn't is it does have the ability to work with Logitech's PowerPlay mat system, which is a charged mouse mat that you can see here. You swap out the puck for this one that comes with the mouse mat, and then you've basically got pass-through charging, so it's constantly got power and it never needs charging, so you have to plug it in. This is almost certainly a highlight because it means that you can just keep going and going. Now, as standard, this mouse can manage up to 70 hours of battery life, which isn't too bad. Obviously, with the advantage of not having RGB, it will go and go. On paper, specs are fairly interesting, as up to 25,000 dpi, 40 Gs max acceleration, 400 IPS max speed, 1000 Hz polling rate. Those specs actually don't match up with the glorious Model 02 wireless, which on paper is superior with 26,000 dpi, 650 IPS, 50 Gs max acceleration, and it also has both Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz. Bluetooth 5.2 low energy as well. So in theory, this mouse offers up to 210 hours of battery life. This one also comes with a USB-C charging cable, which will please many, and obviously the 2.4 GHz dongle and this little adapter as well. It is worth noting, however, that the USB-C is weirdly designed and you can only plug it in one direction, which seems like a strange thing to do with USB-C, and is definitely one of my frustrations with this mouse because it was hard to plug in the dongle and it's hard to plug in the mouse too. I also found that I was charging it more often. The other thing that's interesting is that both of these claim to be lightweight, but Logitech's mouse is still superior in terms of the weight, just 63 grams versus 70 with the glorious Model 02 wireless. But you obviously have some compromises because you have that RGB lighting, for example, so you potentially have a nicer aesthetic depending on what you're into, whether you like RGB or not. You also have 6 programmable buttons, including that Dpi Switching Button on top, and a little indicator on the underside to let you know at a glance what DPI level you're on, which is pretty handy. Obviously, there's no DPI switching button with the Superlight, so that's lacking there. And generally, the buttons are a bit understated in terms of what's going on there. But you do have grip tape included in the box, so you can throw that on and change the look and feel of it, perhaps make it a bit grippier and a bit more comfortable. There are a lot of things that I like about the Superlight. Obviously, one of them is the underside, just the slick, some of the largest I've seen on any gaming mouse, and that obviously makes it really comfortable to use and easy to throw about as well. However, complete lack of Bluetooth may put some people off, and obviously there's no DPI button either. Now, if you put the two mice side by side, you'll notice some other differences. Obviously, there's quite a bit of a difference in shape. They're relatively comparable in terms of the size. There's side buttons, for example, the overall length and height off the desk and things like that. So they're kind of comparable there. But what you'll notice is that the Glorious mouse has kind of dips in the design where your fingers will sit on the main mouse buttons, which perhaps makes it a bit more comfortable. However, I won't say that the Superlight is uncomfortable. I have liked using that in various different iterations, and it is a smooth mouse to game with, and there's a reason that it is well liked and well thought of, because it's slick, it's easy to use, it's accurate, it's responsive, and it just basically offers a great gaming experience with no sort of unnecessary bells and whistles or frills that you wouldn't necessarily need. Perhaps RGB lighting, for example. Do you really need that if you're trying to be a pro gamer? So perhaps not. But you can see the difference between them and sort of the aesthetic appeal of either of them. Obviously, there's both the white versions. They're quite striking in their own right and for different reasons. Now, the micro USB connection is going to annoy many people with the Superlight. As it currently stands, obviously, most modern mice now use USB-C. And the Glorious is obviously one of those now, although it's certainly frustrating to plug in. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well, is that I found I was plugging in the Glorious mouse more than perhaps I'd like. It has up to 110 hours of battery life. It's a claim over 2.4 gigahertz, but I just found that wasn't the case. And that will obviously vary depending on the RGB lighting that you're using. When you've got the two shots of them on the side profile, you can see they're roughly the same in terms of the height they sit off the desk. I feel like you have a bit more room to access the buttons and put your thumb in interesting places with the Superlight, but otherwise they're generally very, very similar in that regard. They're also comfortable too, in my opinion. Now, both of them are really easy to flick around. Obviously, the Superlight lives up to its name in terms of being the lighter of the two. Even with the grip tape, it's still quite a bit lighter. And so if you want something that's really agile in that way, then the Superlight is the one to go for. I personally prefer it. It is my preference out of the two, but it's certainly not my favorite mouse of all time either. I do think it would be nice to see some upgrades to this. Hopefully they'll release a newer version with better switches, USB-C charging and other things. But obviously you do have those hidden highlights that aren't immediately obvious, like I said about the power play system, for example. So you can upgrade and enhance that mouse as well. The Glorious Model O, on the other hand, is a nicer looking mouse potentially, and you have that extra button activity with a Dpi button on top as well, adjustable RGB and more, and in theory, better specs on paper. Stick around now for a sound test, and don't forget to check out the links in the description to the full videos on both of these. Thanks for watching. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos, you might well find them interesting or useful, and most importantly, have a great life.